This is Scott Kokenauer with Coffee Props, and today we are speaking with Rachel, who is also known as Cold Brew Chick, out of San Diego, one of the most beautiful spots in the United States, if not the world. And Rachel, thank you for taking some time out of your schedule and sharing with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So you're calling from San Diego. How did you come to discover the love of coffee, and in particular, your love of cold brew?
Well, I didn't start drinking coffee until I was about 19, 20 years old. I had just taken a career turn and moved back in with my parents and was looking to, switch colleges and switch potential careers. And that's when I first, got into coffee and tried it and liked it. My parents cracked me up. They only drink one coffee, and it's the Starbucks vanilla flavored beans, hot, black.
Okay.
All they drink. That was my first experience into coffee. And got into it, and I was like, yeah, this is good. It gives me the jolt of energy I need for the day. But I noticed the more coffee I drank, both at home and outside, I would start to get acid reflux attacks. And in my mind, I'm thinking, I'm 20 years old. Why am I getting acid reflux? That's something, that happens to people in their 40s and 50s. Like, I feel, what's going on?
Right.
So around this time, I heard about this thing called cold brew. And as far as I knew, it was just like iced coffee. But one of the big highlights of cold brew, besides it being super trendy at the time, was that it had a lower acid level than hot coffee. So I thought, maybe this is my solution. So tried it. It was love at first sip. I always have enjoyed my coffee black. So, to have it in such a concentrated form and to taste all these different flavors and to not get that acid reflux attack that was it for me. And I've been drinking cold brew ever since.
Great. And so your parents are who brought you into the coffee culture? Okay.
Yeah, and not on purpose. It was just like I came downstairs one day. They were drinking coffee. Oh, what are you drinking? Do you want to try it? Sure. So it happened pretty organically. It wasn't like they forced it upon me or anything.
Sure. How old were you, if I may ask?
I was about 18, 19. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Cool. So now that you've been involved in coffee shops, I see. We'll talk about the different places where people can find you. But on your Instagram account, it looks like you're reviewing a number of different types of cold brew from different places. In that process, what do you find is the greatest thing about the entire coffee industry, in your opinion?
So I came from a background of musical theater. I did that for, 15 years of my life. And one of the things I loved about it was how close-knit of a community it was. And that's exactly what I'm seeing with the coffee industry as well. Everyone knows each other. Everyone supports each other. Everyone's very open to talking about their process and sharing things about coffee. That's one of the things I love about my reviews, in addition to trying the cold brew, is just talking to people about it. And people are always so enthusiastic to talk with me about their process, things that they're doing. And I'll mention the name of a place I've been to. And it's, I've been there. I love that guy. I talked to that person. So I just love how everyone is so supportive of each other, and creative as well. There's so many creative creations, not just in cold brew, but just in coffee in general, that are coming out with this third wave, and it's really interesting to see. But yeah, that close knitness and that just like community sense, I really love seeing that with my conversations with people.
Well, let me take that question just a little bit further. And what is the most unique way that you've seen cold brew extracted? Is there something that stands out in your mind from all these people that you've talked to?
Not so much the extraction, because cold brew, there's really only one true. That's the funny thing about cold brew, is that there's actually no standard defined definition of cold brew out there. Mm-hmm. So you can do a lot of things with cold brew and still call it cold brew, because it's technically not going to be wrong. And for example, one of the things that people do is they do what's called a hot bloom. So they'll subject the coffee grounds to hot water just for a brief second, and then they'll pour it over ice, or they'll immediately chill it, and they consider that a cold brew. Some people would disagree, but, and neither one's technically wrong. But as far as steeping, it's usually the typical, steep the grounds in cold water or that hot bloom. So as far as diversity, it's not so much the steeping process that I see is different. It's what people are steeping it with that makes it different. I've seen coconut and cacao have been the two most popular. that I've seen from people, which makes sense because they complement coffee so well. But there's a place I went to, there's a rose cold brew that was awesome. And the most unique, someone is doing a CBD cold brew. That was pretty unique.
Okay, all right. And so the confusion or the point of debate is whether it's iced coffee or cold brew.
Hmm.
And this is that's probably a topic for another interview, and maybe digging deep. And of course, if you're listening to this right now and you're on Facebook, feel free to share a comment about cold brew. If you're watching it on YouTube, put a comment there. We are interested in learning as much as we can while we're connecting people who share this passion for coffee. So enough of my little soapbox. If you could change anything from what you've seen in the culture, the coffee shops, the age ranges, anything, if you could change and improve anything about the coffee culture and make it better, what would you change?
I would like to see further emphasis on cold brew and see even more diversity in creations with it. It's still a fairly newish drink that's out there that's been created. And don't get me wrong, just about every coffee shop you go to now does offer cold brew. But it doesn't mean they're all good cold brews, There's some people that just take leftover beans that they have and just kind of keep it for however long they decide, sometimes just overnight and call it a day and then just serve that as cold brew. And if people are trying that for the first time and they think that's what the standard of cold brew is, then they're going to be turned away from it and never have it again. And, cold brew has been almost a saving grace for me in that it's the way I can enjoy my coffee without getting my acid reflux attacks. But even if that's something you don't struggle with, cold brew is something I think that can and should be enjoyed by everybody, especially here in San Diego where we have, luckily very warm, pleasant weather 90% of the time. It's a very easy drink of choice. So that's kind of part of the reason why I do reviews and I don't just talk to people about cold brew is because I do want to find out if there are cold brews out there that maybe need a little tweaking or aren't that great. I want people to know and call these companies out and say, hey, I think you can do better. I think there's a high standard for cold brew that's out there, and I think you can match it. You're not quite there, but I think you can get there. So luckily here in San Diego, I would say about 70-80% of the cold brews I've had have been very good, or very, very solid, good standard cold brews. But there have been a couple that I unfortunately did have to, rank it a little low. So I would love, and maybe it would help once they create that standard definition of what cold brew is, how long you have to steep it for, what technically constitutes as cold brew. But for the most part, yeah, just seeing a general, appreciation for what cold brew is as a premium coffee drink.
Right. Okay. And so that leads me to my next question, and that's where we can find you. Now, I'm kind of, as you're talking, I'm scrolling through your Instagram photos, and everyone can get a feel for that. And of course, you can be found at Cold Brew Chick, and on that Instagram profile is a link to a YouTube page, and it's also by the same name, Cold Brew Chick, and you've got some uploads there, and so where else we can find you also on Facebook, correct?
Yes, I have a Facebook, and that's where I upload all my Instagram posts as well. My YouTube, I use if I interview anyone for an extended amount of time, I like to upload those reviews there because, I like sharing as much information and knowledge that I learn about cold brew to the people that also enjoy cold brew. And I do review bottled cold brews as well. There are some cold brews here in San Diego that are only bottled; they're not served in a shop. Or on tap anywhere. So I do review those cold brews and some cold brews that are offered nationwide. And I like to do video reviews of that just because there's not a lot of video content out there, not just in cold brew, but in coffee in general. So I'd love to change that.
Well, good. All right. So that's really what you're doing to improve the coffee industry is more education. And other than Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook, is there any other place we can find you?
I'm looking to be starting a podcast about cold brew. There is no single cold brew podcast out there. And, when I interview people and I talk to people about cold brew, I record it for my own sake so that when I type up my review later, I can hear back and remember, what type of beans did we say they did, or what process did they, how long did they steep the beans for? But, I have some recordings on my phone that are an hour long of people just spurting out just the greatest information about cold brew. It's just insane. Some people are so passionate and so knowledgeable about this, and I want to share that with everybody. So keep your eyes peeled. Probably about a month, 2 months, I'm going to be looking to launch my podcast, and I have a great lineup of people that I've talked and interviewed with that are super awesome and have just so much knowledge about this stuff.
You know what I would love to see someday? I would love to see a siphon at the very top of a Kalita tower making cold brew. I don't know. That's weird. But, okay, so tell me about your favorite, do you have a favorite origin of cold brew?
Oh, as far as beans?
Yes.
So going into this, I was not a coffee concierge. I kind of gave it as a forewarning to everyone I reviewed. I'm like, hey, I don't, know anything as far as like beans and flavors go. I don't think that my palate probably isn't as refined as a roaster. I know I love cold brew, and I know when I taste it if I enjoy it or not. And through drinking a lot of cold brew, the more coffee you drink, the more refined your palate becomes, and that's why they do put those tasty notes on beans and by your coffee, so you kind of get an idea of what flavors to look for. I've learned through tasting cold brew, there's two very distinct types. There's your bolder, more chocolate flavored, richer cold brews, and then you have the lighter, fruitier, higher acidity cold brews. And by acidity, I don't mean that to be confused with acids. They're two very different things.
Right.
If you're confused about that, you can go on my Instagram page, and I have a post about it. But I tend to lean towards bolder, richer cold brews. That's just what my palate prefers. And I've learned that the lighter, fruitier cold brews are usually Ethiopian, have that flavor profile. A lot of the African beans. If a bean comes from Africa, it's going to probably have more of that flavor. It's the beans that come more from like South America, like Colombian, Brazil, Honduras. Those are usually the richer, chocolatier cold brews that I like. So I would say that I do prefer more of the South American beans. But I've been surprised. There's been a couple beans cold brews I've had done that were from like Africa, or they had some Ethiopian in them in a blend, and I really, really enjoyed it. So I wouldn't say I'm too particular on one bean per se, but I do have a flavor profile that I do tend to lean towards.
So I'm not going to put you on the spot and ask you what your favorite coffee shop is, but I am going to say give a shout out to one of your favorite coffee shops.
Oh, that's so hard. That's like asking a mom to say which child is their favorite. Okay, I do have to do two, just because they're a little different. Shop-wise, I have to give props to Wholesome Coffee in North Park. They took my cold brew virginity. They were the first cold brew I ever had, and that I just was enamored by their cold brew. It was so delicious, so rich, and so bold. And they had all these amazing cold brew creations, like a Nutella cold brew. I don't like sweet drinks, but I would drink that in a heartbeat any day. It's so good. And that became like my study spot. That is where I go to study. I get my cold brew, and I just, for 2 hours, knock out everything I need to get out. And I had the best academic year of my life doing all my studying there. So I have to give a huge shout out to Wholesome Coffee in North Park. My favorite cold brew that I'm so in love with right now is by their shop up in Poway, Rancho Bernardo area. The name's Mostra Coffee. And they have what's called an OBC, or one Brazilian coconuts, and it's amazing beyond words. It's just so decadently rich, and you have this wonderful coconut flavor in there. And the way that they bottle it, I've never seen before. It's almost like a rubber spout that you kind of have to like pop off, but it keeps the cold brew fresh. It prevents it from oxidizing. And I've had that. I was lucky enough, I got a bottle, and 4 days later, I tried it, and it tasted just as fresh as when I sampled it on tap at their shop. It's just so, so good. So yeah, that's my favorite cold brew right now. But if I need to get work done, if I need to study, if I need just a solid, good cold brew, I go to Wholesome.
So everything you want to learn about cold brew, follow Cold Brew Chick on Instagram or on YouTube and or on Facebook. So, Rachel, thank you for taking the time. I hope we stay in touch with you, and let us know when the podcast is up. We'll do our best to prop you and keep the connections going and keep this coffee thing on an upward spiral, getting better and better.
Yes. Thank you so
Right?
much for having me.
Okay.